Hare Krishna, Ambada. When you speak, Ambada,
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
oh, you can hear me.
Yes, Maharaj.
So nobody else is here yet.
I know they will come very soon. Yes, ma'am.
Because I just wondered whether, you know, he said when he says end the other meeting before I can start this one. And I always get worried when that sign comes up because it means that everybody's on another meeting and I don't know how to get onto it. But it seems like it's working now. Oh, so we can start.
But please, may you explain exactly where we start?
Okay, we're on the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Canto 3, Chapter 30, text 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So anybody remember anything from last week?
Fruitive activities. Description of Lord Kapil saying that fruitive activities was not only suitable for materialistic persons, I think. I think that's what it implies.
Yeah, it was speaking about material life.
Yeah. We also spoke about the time factor.
Yeah, we were talking about a time factor before that. And then the time factors, you know, putting everything into motion. So then it starts talking about how it affects us in this material world, and how that everything we're working for is a big struggle and full of anxiety. You know, we're trying to maintain family and so many other things, but then it's all taken away by old age. And so we got to that point where death comes. Yeah. Yes, and we did 29, we did explanation of devotional service. You know, this was Ashtanga Yoga, meditating on the form of the Lord, different forms of the Lord. Yeah, meditating on his eyes, on his, like that. So this is like Ashtanga Yoga. And then 29, devotional service. You know, we spoke about, there were 3 questions. The nature of time, the cycle of, what is it? Details about Bhakti, the nature of time, and the cycle of birth and death. So these were answered in, we talked about devotional service in the modes of nature, if you remember. And then we talked about the characteristics of pure devotional service, how it's free from the concept of liberation. We said we should, you know, we talked about living in the world without excessive violence. That means, you know, we have to, you know, Hasani Sahastanam Apadi Najatuspadam Falguni Tatra Mahatami Jiva Jiva Shijivanam. Every living entity lives at the cost of somebody else. It's just a natural situation in the material world, but we shouldn't actually, you know, we should just take what's necessary for us and not, like in the Upanishad verse, Isavashyamidam Sarvam, and not unnecessary violence by, you know, taking more than that. And we talked about the gradations of jivas, right from the inanimate objects up to the pure devotee. And then at the end of the chapter 28, 29, we spoke about time. Its characteristics. So then we started on chapter 30, and then we say how time destroys our life. So now we're talking about that, how we go through the different aspects of life, and it's full of anxiety. And now we're talking about death. So chapter 19, text 19. Krishna. So, who led last time? Can you remember? Was it Mbada?
Maharaj, we all read, I think. We started from the bottom.
All right.
Me, I was.
All right, start from the top then. It's your turn, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Text 19. At death, he sees the messengers of the Lord of Death come before him, the eyes full of wrath, and in great fear he passes stool and urine. As a criminal is arrested for punishment by the constables of the state, a person engaged in criminal sense gratification is similarly arrested by the Yamdutas, who bind him by the neck with strong rope and cover his subtle body so that he may undergo severe punishment. While carried by the constables of Yamraj, he is overwhelmed and trembles in the hands. While passing on the road, he is bitten by dogs, and he can remember the sinful activities of his life. He is thus terribly distressed. Under the scorching sun, the criminal has to pass through roads of hot sand with forest fires on both sides. He is whipped on the back by the constables because of his inability to walk, and he is afflicted by hunger and thirst, but unfortunately there is no drinking water, no shelter, and no place for rest on the road. While passing on that road to the abode of Yamraj, he falls down in fatigue, and sometimes he becomes unconscious, but he is forced to rise again. In this way, he is very quickly brought to the presence of Yamraj. Thus, he has to pass 99,000 yojanas within 2 or 3 moments, and then he is at once engaged in the torturous punishment which he is destined to suffer. He is placed in the midst of burning pieces of wood, and his limbs are set on fire. In some cases, he is made to eat his own flesh or have it eaten by others. His entrails are pulled out by the hounds and vultures of hell, even though he is still alive to see it, and he is subjected to torment by serpents, scorpions, gnats, and other creatures that bite him. Next, his limbs are lopped off and torn asunder by elephants. He is hurled down from hilltops, and he is also held captive, either in water or in a cave. Men and women whose lives were built upon indulgence in illicit sex life are put into many kinds of miserable conditions in the hells known as Tamisra, Under Tamisra, and Rorava. Lord Kapila continued, "My dear mother, it is sometimes said that we experience hell or heaven on this planet, for hellish punishments are sometimes visible on this planet also. After leaving this body, the man who maintained himself and his family members by sinful activities suffers a hellish life, and his relatives also suffer also. He goes alone to the darkest regions of hell after quitting the present body, and the money he acquired by envying other living entities is the passage money with which he leaves this world. Thus, by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maintainer of kinsmen is put into a hellish condition to suffer for his sinful activities like a man who has lost his wealth. Therefore, a person who is very eager to maintain his family and kinsmen simply by black methods certainly goes to the darkest region of hell, which is known as Andhatamisra. Having gone through all the miserable hellish conditions and having passed in a regular order through the lowest forms of animal life prior to human birth, and having thus been purged of his sins, one is reborn again as a human being on this earth."
Okay. What do you think of that?
It's frightening, Maharaj.
No.
That's what it's meant to be.
Seems reasonable. I thought it was a bit harsh.
Yeah, people are completely in ignorance. They don't know about these things. They probably wouldn't be bothered if they heard about them after, probably. So, any other? Who's next? I'm seeing Mashi. Can you start reading text 31?
I'm a little lost. The beginning of the new chapter 31, yes?
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's lovely, thank you. So I thought it was text 31, I thought there's not in there. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. The personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to the results of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semina to assume a particular type of body. On the first night, the semina and ovum mix, and on the 5th night, the mixture ferments into a bubble. On the 10th night, it develops into a form like a plum, and after that, gradually it turns into a lump of flesh or an egg, as the case may be. In the course of a month, a head is formed. At the end of 2 months, hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. By the end of 3 months, the nails, fingers, toes, body hair, bones, and skin appear, as do the organ of generation and the other apertures in the body, namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus. Within 4 months from the date of conception, the 7 essential ingredients of the body, namely chyle, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semina, come into existence. At the end of 5 months, hunger and thirst make themselves felt. At the end of 6 months, the fetus, enclosed by the amnion, begins to move on the right side of the abdomen. Deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken from the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abominable residence of stools and urine, which is the breeding place of all kinds of worms. Bitten again and again all over the body by the hungry worms in the abdomen itself, the child suffers terrible agony because of its tenderness. He thus becomes unconscious moment after moment because of the terrible condition. Owing to the mother's eating bitter, pungent foodstuffs or food which is too salty or too sour, the body of the child incessantly suffers pains which are almost intolerable. Placed within the amnion and covered outside by the intestines, the child remains lying on one side of the abdomen, his head turned towards his belly, and his back neck arched like a bow. The child thus remains just like a bird in a cage, without freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births, and he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month after his conception, the child is tossed downward by the airs that press the embryo towards the weeks preceding delivery, like the worms born of the same filthy abdominal cavity. He cannot remain in one place. The living entity is in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only, because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. I, the pure soul, appearing now to be bound up by my activities, am lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of Maya. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him who is also here with me, but who is unaffected and changeless. He is unlimited, but he is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectful obeisances.
So it says that, not all babies in that condition or all jivas in that condition pray, because it's just those who are actually qualified. Because if somebody's not qualified, they won't pray to the Lord. So it's not everybody who gets that feeling. Carry on, sorry.
Shall I carry on?
Yeah.
I am separated from the Supreme Lord because of my being in this material body, which is made of 5 elements, and therefore my qualities and senses are being misused, although I am essentially spiritual. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to material nature and the living entities, because he is devoid of such a material body, and because he is always glorious in his spiritual qualities, I offer my obeisances unto him. The human soul further prays. The living entity is put under the influence of material nature and continues a hard struggle for existence on the path of repeated birth and death. This conditioned life is due to his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, without the Lord's mercy, how can he again engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord? No one other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the localized Paramatma, the partial representation of the Lord, is directing all inanimate and animate objects. He is present in the three phases of time, past, present, and future. Therefore, the conditioned soul is engaged in different activities by his direction. And in order to get free from the threefold miseries of this conditional life, we have to surrender unto him only. Fallen into a pool of blood, stool, and urine within the abdomen of his mother, his own body scorched by the mother's gastric fire, the embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his months and prays, "O my Lord, when shall I, a wretched soul, be released from this confinement?" My dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I am awakened to consciousness, although I am only 10 months old. For this causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the friend of all the fallen souls, there is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands. Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition, still I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy called Devamaya.
Sorry, Mataji, you missed one verse.
Oh, thank you. The living entity, is that the one? The living entity is another type of body. Is that one?
Yeah.
The living entity is another type of body, sees only by instinct. He knows only the agreeable and disagreeable sense perceptions of that particular body. But I have a body in which I can control my senses and can understand my destination. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whom I have been blessed with this body, and by whose grace I can see him within and without. Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition, still I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Devamaya, at once captures the newly born child, and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of continual birth and death, begins.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
It's only a devotee who will actually pray like that. Because, you know, he has an understanding from previous life. So, you know, devotees can be put into that condition again. It's not that we're, you know, so it's not a very good condition. And so, you know, he says, I don't want to go out into the world because I get caught up by Maya again. And so, you know, it says here that link that, so what, Krishna may say, what have you decided then? What do you want to do? You know, you've got to go out there. So, can't stay there all the time. So you better become serious, in other words. Okay. So next is...
So, Maharaj, it's very interesting how the modern understanding of birth and the whole, it paints such a nice, pretty picture of childbirth and all the rest of it, isn't it? And there's all these books and all these, I don't know what they call them, who are interested in birth, pediatricians and all that. Anyway, it's like they discovered this whole process of birth, isn't it? The development within the fetus, etc. And you can buy obviously books on that which describe everything.
Yeah.
But it's all been described in here. It's always been there, that knowledge, isn't it? It's very,
Yeah.
This is like a really good example of that. But it's so covered that they just tried to present it in. It's such a wonderful thing, childbirth. But actually, when you think about it, it's a horrible thing.
Yeah. Yeah, they think that, you know, people in the past were all living in caves.
Mm.
You know, they didn't know anything. But actually, you know, people of bygone ages, they knew a lot more than what they do now, or at least the important things. You know, even mathematics, you know, it says there's a certain kind of mathematics where you can do it very easily. It's in the Vedas, and everything's there. But, you know, we are actually, Purna Charvita Charvana, we're chewing the chewed, inventing things which are already invented, you know. And we're doing things which have already been done so many times. You know, what is the benefit? I mean, who'll remember that, you know, who invented gravity? Come on, who invented gravity?
Newton.
Einstein.
Voilà.
All right, come on.
Newton.
Mark.
Newton.
Krishna
Oh, Newton,
invented gravity. It's always been there.
It was Isaac, weren't it?
Isaac.
Isaac Newton.
Yeah.
And an apple dropped on his head.
Yeah.
And it, but you know, it's
Well, he realized it, probably, didn't he? He didn't actually invent gravity. Gravity was always there.
oh, that's right, yeah.
There's a wonderful video that I'll put it up for you, that was sent. It was about all the knowledge and all the education that came out of India, and every subject from it, you know, all stem from there. I'll flag it up for you. It'll be the best if anybody wants to watch it.
Okay. All right, so who's next? Karshan. Next, 32.
Oh no, it's Jai Krishna, isn't it? Is it Jai Krishna? JK, yeah, Jai Krishna.
What is
Which one? 32?
it? Let's have a look.
21, Prabhu.
Is it
20, yeah.
31.
20.
21.
Yeah, that's what I was on before. I just thought I heard someone say 32.
Your is.
Okay, 21. Therefore, without being agitated any more, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of nescience with the help of my friend. Clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering into the wombs of many mothers for repeated birth and death. Lord Kapil continued, the 10-month-old living entity has these desires even while in the womb. For while he thus extols the Lord, the wind that helps parturition propels him forth with his face turned downwards so that he may be born. Pushed downwards, all of a sudden, by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble, head downwards, breathless, and deprived of memory due to severe agony. The child thus falls onto the ground, smeared with stool and blood, and plays just like a worm germinating from the stool. He loses his superior knowledge and cries under the spell of Maya. After coming out of the abdomen, the child is given the care of persons who are unable to understand what he wants, and thus he is nursed by such persons. Unable to refuse whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances. Laid down on a foul bed infested with sweat and germs, the poor child is incapable of scratching his body to get relief from his itching sensation, to say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving. In his helpless condition, gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby, whose skin is tender, just as the smaller worms bite a big worm. The child, deprived of his wisdom, cries bitterly. In this way, the child passes through his childhood, suffering different kinds of distresses, and attains boyhood. In boyhood, he also suffers pain over desires and gets things he can never achieve, and thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry and sorry. With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people. By such ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With this misunderstanding, he accepts the non-permanent things as his own, and increases his ignorance in the darkest region. For the sake of the body, which is a source of constant trouble to him, and which follows him because he is bound by ties of ignorance and fruitive activities, he performs various actions which cause him to be subjected to repeated birth and death. If therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people, engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. He becomes devoid of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, fortune, and all such opportunities. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. the infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as the resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took form of a hind. Amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayan is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of woman. Just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of woman, who, by the mere movement of her eyebrows, can keep even the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman, for such a woman is declared in the scriptures as to be the gateway to hell for the advanced devotee. This is great. The woman created by the Lord is a representation of Maya, and one who associates with such Maya is, by accepting service, must certainly know that this is the way of death, just like a blind well covered with grass. A living entity who...
All right. You know, to put that in,
Doing it.
put that on the, what's in the people or the sun. Put it in the paper. Women's live in it. All right, so who's next? No, it's Harada.
Oh, you want to go first? I'll go first. I'll go then. Wife.
I did Jai Krishna go with it.
Yeah, that was just him then.
All right.
A woman, therefore, should consider her husband, her house, and her... Right one? Which one? Oh, sorry. Which one are we on? 41. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life, has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of a man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. A woman, therefore, should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. Due to his particular type of body, the materialistic living entity wanders from one planet to another, following fruitive activities. In this way, he involves himself in fruitive activities and enjoys the results incessantly. In this way, the living entity gets a suitable body with a material mind and senses, according to his fruitive activities. When the reaction of his particular activity comes to an end, that end is called death. And when a particular type of reaction begins, that beginning is called birth. When the eyes lose their power to see color or form due to morbid affliction of the optic nerve, the sense of sight becomes deadened. The living entity, who is the seer of both the eyes and sight, loses its power of vision. In the same way, when the physical body, the place where perception of objects occurs, is rendered incapable of perceiving, that is known as death. When one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, that is called birth. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, nor have recourse to define the body as soul, nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in purpose. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should relegate his body to this illusionary world through his reason. Thus one can be unconcerned with this material world. Jai.
So any of similar verse in the Bhagavad Gita? how does he, what does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? So this is how he walks, isn't it? How he walks through the world. One should move about in this world of Maya without attachment to the body. Or what do you say, in this world but not of it, is that right? Okay, so now we're so that's a general description. And how we come out in the womb, we've got knowledge, but then when we come out, you know, due to the difficult situation, the pain of birth, we forget. And so we have to be re-educated by the parents. And then, you know, there's always that risk of getting bad association because, you know, we become like that association. So, you know, we have to be really careful that we get association which is beneficial for us. Beneficial, you know, which will take us forward. So we can read Shastra like that. You know, usually the best association is that which we don't like. You know what I mean? That what we like is usually, you know, unless we're advanced, of course, is usually what satisfies the material desires or our own perception of what we should be, what is good and what is bad. So therefore, if we follow Shastra, we know what we should be doing. We can take association with suitable situation which will help us, which will be painful, you know, because we're attached. That's the point of taking initiation, taking the association of devotees, not necessarily to be wrapped in cotton wool, you know what I mean, but, you know, to be moulded, to develop our proper character and spiritual life. Yes, so now we go on to entanglement in fruitive activities.
Wow.
And it tells you about, we've done this before in Bhagavad Gita, attached workers, detached workers, those who worship the, you know, the yogis. So it's Sakam Karma Yoga, that's 1 to 4, and Nishkam Karma Yoga, 5 to 7. You know, Sakam means attached, but we surrender results afterwards. We do what we want to do, and then we'll give. And Nishkam means we're attached to a particular type of activity, but not the result. We're actually doing it with knowledge for a higher purpose. Sakam means we're doing it for our sense gratification. Who's next? Mataji.
The personality of Godhead said, the person who lives in the center of household life derives material benefits by performing religious rituals, and thereby he fulfills his desire for economic development and sense gratification. Again and again he acts the same way. Such persons are ever bereft of devotional service due to being too attached to sense gratification, and therefore, although they perform various kinds of sacrifices and take great vows to satisfy the demigods and forefathers, they are not interested in Krishna consciousness, devotional service. Such materialistic persons, attracted by sense gratification and devoted to the forefathers and demigods, can be elevated to the moon, where they drink the extract of the soma plant. They again return to this planet. All the planets of the materialistic persons, including all the heavenly planets, such as the moon, are vanquished when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, goes to his bed of serpents, which is known as Anantashesha. Those who are intelligent and are of purified consciousness are completely satisfied in Krishna consciousness Free from the modes of material nature, they do not act for sense gratification. Rather, since they are situated in their own occupational duties, they act as one is expected to act. By executing one's occupational duties, acting with detachment and without a sense of proprietorship or false egoism, one is posted in one's constitutional position by dint of complete purification of consciousness, and by thus executing so-called material duties, he can easily enter into the kingdom of God. Through the path of illumination, such liberated persons approach the complete personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of the material and spiritual worlds and is the supreme cause of their manifestation and dissolution. Worshippers of the Hiranyagarbha expansion of the personality of Godhead remain within this material world until the end of 2 paradas, when Lord Brahma also dies. After experiencing the inhabitable time of the 3 modes of material nature known as 2 paradas, Lord Brahma closes the material universe, which is covered by layers of earth, water, air, fire, ether, mind, ego, etc., and goes back to Godhead. The yogis who become detached from the material world by practice of breathing exercises and control of the mind reach the planet of Brahma, which is far, far away. After giving up their bodies, they enter into the body of Lord Brahma, and therefore, when Brahma is liberated and goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Brahman, such yogis can also enter into the kingdom of God. Therefore, my dear mother, by devotional service, take direct shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is seated in everyone's heart. My dear mother, someone may worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a special self-interest, but even demigods such as Lord Brahma, great sages such as Sanat Kumara, and great munis such as Marichi have to come back to this material world again at the time of creation. When the interaction of the 3 modes of material nature begins, Brahma, who is the creator of this cosmic manifestation and who is full of Vedic knowledge, and the great sages, who are the authors of the spiritual path and the yoga system, come back under the influence of the time factor. They are liberated by their non-fruitive activities and they attain the first incarnation of the Purusha. But at the time of creation, they come back in exactly the same forms and positions as they had previously.
Okay. So what verse are you on now?
Just about 16.
All right, so so here it tells you about there's 2 different kinds. So only those who worship Hiranyagarbha or Vishnu will go back to Godhead. But those who don't have bhakti, they won't get liberation, but they'll go into the body of Mahavishnu along with Brahma, enter into the body. I mean, Brahma, he sometimes at the end of his life goes back to Godhead, and it says sometimes. Let me just read it. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that if the Hiranyagarbha worshippers worship only Brahma, who do not have bhakti for Lord Vishnu, they will not attain liberation at the end of Brahma's life. They merge into the body of Mahavishnu along with Brahma. But when the universes are created again, they enter into the universe. So it's assuming that Brahma is actually not a devotee, I assume, or not a strong enough devotee to go back to God, because Brahma, at the end of his life, he does go back to God. It mentions in some parts of Bhagavatam, and he takes his followers with him, those who are actually pure devotees. And then, although Brahma becomes liberated, he cannot liberate his devotees. Only the Supreme Lord can liberate one from the clutches of Maya. So, you know, the advice is not to get involved in all these different processes, but just worship the Supreme Lord.
Maharaj,
Yeah.
isn't it that the form of Lord Brahma will always come back and go back and, you know, merge into Mahavishnu, because he's the creator of the universe, isn't he? But the jiva within Lord Brahma isn't that jiva is the jiva that goes back to Godhead.
Well, in this case, it says that, you know, Brahma enters into the body of Mahavishnu with the jiva if he's not got bhakti. But it does mention that, you know, if he's got bhakti, the jiva will go back. But, you know, also Lord Brahma goes back to Godhead in some cases as well.
But Maharaj, isn't it that Lord Brahma is a jiva, but sometimes when it's no suitable person, then Krishna takes that role?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's not qualified,
Yeah.
but you can be, you know, what's qualified? Hiranyakashipu, well qualified.
Mm.
You know, he knew all the shastras and he had all the mystic powers, but he weren't qualified as a devotee. So we can become qualified for a position, but not necessarily be a devotee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm going to say some of them, but I better not. So spark off. Anyway, so I understand that he just mentioned that Brahma takes his devotees back to Godhead at the end of this life sometimes, at the end of his life. So, you know, there's three options here. Brahma's a devotee, or he's not a devotee, or it's Vishnu, or it's Krishna. So, if, you know, it's not like they just stick somebody in there. If you know, he's got to be actually qualified to do the service. Same with the sun god. Sometimes the sun god is actually Supreme Lord Surya. Right?
Maharaj, isn't all the demigods posts, aren't they all supposed to be devotees anyway? You can't have a post, you know, a big post like that without being a devotee of the Lord. But do you mean they are not pure devotees?
Oh, no, they're described as they've got material desires.
Mm.
So that's why they're actually still in the material world. But they're qualified enough, or they're serious enough for, you know, to take on a responsible post in devotional service, because they're actually performing service to Vishnu, to Krishna. But, you know, they must have some desire to overlord it.
Mm.
You know, that's why we have to get rid of all desires and just desire to serve Krishna. If we have any desires for anything in this world, then, you know, we'll get that, even if we're a devotee. So it's best to be a simple devotee. Just chant your round and keep your nose clean, you know. Don't get into politics. Otherwise, you might finish up as a politician in your next life.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you've got to be careful. You know, like Yamaraj, I was thinking, how does Yamaraj get his post? It's either that he's really, really renounced, and or he may have a desire. I mean, I can't really say this about Yamaraj, he's a demigod, but, you know, he's in that post. How do the Yamadutas get their post of serving Yamaraj? You know, if we've got too much animosity, we might finish up as a Yamaduta, where we can take it out on people.
Maharaj, I knew a devotee in Scotland who said he would like to have been a Yamaduta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Maharaj is more bewildering because Yamaraj is not just a, you know, demigod, but he's a Mahajan, so that makes it even more.
Oh, Yamaraj is a Mahajan, that's right. I mean,
Must be pretty special.
but Bhishma's Mahajan.
Hmm.
What else is there? Shiva's a Mahajan.
Janak also, which is quite interesting.
Bali Maharaj. Well, yeah, I mean, definitely, whatever we're generating in this life, we'll carry on in the next life with that. So we have to actually generate pure devotional service and read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita, one who is not a kind friend to all, who doesn't desire this and that, these are the qualities we're trying to develop. And, we're going through the school of hard knocks so that, we get all the attachments knocked out of us. Because, we're probably not intelligent enough to renounce. And that's what happens, you think, when you go through certain experiences, it actually starts to make you more thoughtful about, do I really want this, Is it really worth it, Why not just surrender to Krishna? Of course, when we're on that platform, then we may be given some responsibility. We have to do it, but then we can do it with detachment. We're all, there's nothing static in devotional service. It's not like we reach a point where we don't make any more advancement. Everybody is advancing more and more all the time. It's ever increasing. And so, we're always in that little bit of a situation where we can increase our devotion to Krishna. But, it gets to a point like, according to what it says about the spiritual world, where it's all bliss anyway. There's not any, anxiety or fear or, pain. It's a different, it gets to a point where when you completely surrender to trying to serve Krishna, it'll be a different dynamics or different feelings. What were the Devamrita Maharaj, who'd been interviewed by Gauranga Prabhu about devotee care. And Gauranga asked a question, what about if you're a devotee and you experience some problems? What do you do? He says, he'd expect an answer like, should take shelter of a devotee. Devotee care is the name of the little seminar. And then, seek his advice and he'll be, well looked after. He said, no, he says, you've got to accept the situation you're in and be happy. You've got to see the service as, a service to Krishna. And that, we're fortunate to get this opportunity to serve Krishna in this particular service. And if we're thinking like that, the difficulties won't be so apparent. You will think, well, this is what I have to do. This is my service. Not that we're always trying to avoid getting into, trying to avoid services because they're difficult. You know what I mean? And then, you can take pleasure in the service in that way, knowing that it's actually for your own good at least. It's not actually meant for anything else but our development, and it's Krishna's our well-wishing friend in every situation. Every situation is actually beneficial for our progress, especially a devotee who's been given some service, So you've got to get on with it and you're complaining. That's the answer. Anyway, that's not... I mean, Krishna don't talk like me, isn't it? This is not a very good way to put it. But my vocabulary is very limited. Okay, who's next? It's, let's have a look what we got here. It's Gauri, that's in it.
Okay, Maharaj. Text 16.
Take 16, yeah.
Persons who are too addicted to this material world execute their prescribed duties very nicely and with great faith. They daily perform all such prescribed duties with attachment to the fruitive results. Such persons, impelled by the mode of passion, are full of anxieties and always aspire for sense gratification, which can control thinking.
Now he's talking about Sakam Karma Yoga. You know, people who are attached to enjoying, this is what they suffer.
They worship the forefathers and are busy day and night improving the economic condition of their family, social, or national life. Such persons are called Trivargika because they are interested in the three elevating processes. They are averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can give relief to the unconditioned soul, relief to the conditioned soul. They are not interested in the Supreme Personality's pastimes, which are worth hearing because of his transcendental prowess. Such persons are condemned by the Supreme Order of the Lord because they are averse to the nectar of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are compared to his stool-eating hogs. They give up hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord and indulge in hearing of the abominable activities of materialistic persons. Such materialistic persons are allowed to go to the planet called Pitraloka by the southern course of the sun. But they again come back to this planet and take birth in their own families, beginning again the same fruitive activities from birth to end of the life. When the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they fall down by higher arrangements and again come back to this planet, just as any person raised to a high position sometimes all of a sudden falls. My dear mother, I therefore advise that you take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for his lotus feet are worth worshipping. Accept this with all devotion and love, for thus you can be situated in transcendental devotional service. Engagement in Krishna consciousness and application of devotional service unto Krishna makes it possible to advance in knowledge and detachment, as well as in self-realization. The exalted devotee's mind becomes equipoised in sensory activities and is transcendental to that which is agreeable, and non-agreeable. Because of this transcendental intelligence, the pure devotee is equipoised in his vision and sees himself to be uncontaminated by matter. He does not see anything as superior or inferior, and he feels himself elevated to the transcendental platform of being equal in qualities with the Supreme Person. The Supreme Personality of Godhead alone is complete, transcendental.
What number are you on?
26.
All right.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead alone is complete, transcendental knowledge, but according to the different processes of understanding appears differently, either as impersonal Brahma or as Paramatma, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or as Purusha Avatara.
Okay. Yeah, so by Brahman and Paramatma process, this is Jnana and Yoga. The rest of us some Bhakti there, and but Bhakti is independent. We don't need Jnana or Yoga, so it's best to just practice pure Bhakti. This is the purport here. All other goals are achieved if we do that. Just like he mentions that. So It's like milk, you know, you can smell it, you can see it, you know, you can feel it, like that. And but until you taste it, you don't really get the understand what milk is. So it's similar. These processes are like that. Until we actually engage in bhakti, we don't really know what we don't really know what bhakti is. This is what we're actually looking for. Approaching the Supreme Lord by different means. Those who try to find the Lord by mental speculation may approach his bodily effulgence and personal Brahman. Those who try to find him by mystic yoga may realize him as localized super soul. But those who directly approach the Supreme Lord by Bhakti Yoga can see him face to face as Bhagavan. Thus, the Supreme Lord is the ultimate destination of all the processes. By depending on the particular process one follows, one reaches a particular aspect of the Lord. But the Bhagavan realization of Bhakti includes the realization of Paramatma and Brahman features as well. Thus, Bhakti is the best path, and Bhagavan realization is the ultimate. So that's like tasting the milk. So we've got, it's a minute to. Do you want to finish this chapter, or shall we pack it in? Take about another 10 minutes.
We need to leave, Maharaj, sorry. Just
Okay.
we've got another meeting, so Hare Krishna.
Okay, so we'll stop there. And we'll see you next week. And we'll start with 32, chapter 32, text 27. Okay.
And Harinam Saturday afternoon, Maharaj.
Is it?
Yeah,
Where is it?
same place.
Same place.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let you know close. Give you some more detail on Saturday.
Yeah, what we could do actually, I'll talk to you. If you've got a class now, I'll give you a ring. I'm thinking that even if you're going away, we can still do the Harinam. If there's enough devotees.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Steve will be around, and he'll want to carry on doing that.
I mean, maybe you could leave your
Yes.
fire and think, and fit book table.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do all that. No problem.
Okay.
Okay. Speak to you soon, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Krishna.
Bye, everyone.